Hey everybody, welcome back. This week we're going to talk about strength training and how you might fit in your strength training for your triathlon training schedule. So as a triathlete or runner, when you're doing strength training, you're not going for size, although some muscle size will increase as a result of your training. We're going for strength and power, and there's a difference in how you approach these training stimuli. So when we're going for pure strength, we're going for lower reps, higher weight. That would be multiple sets at like 4 to 6 reps, and 4 to 6 reps is all you can do. When we're going for power, that's a component of speed. So you're going, moderately hard weight, but you're going with rapidity, right? Like you're moving quickly. An example of something like that would be a squat thrust. So that's where you're holding dumbbells and you would squat, quickly stand up and push the dumbbells overhead. That's more of a power move. The same would go for squat jumps, especially if you're going squat jumps with weights. So those are power. The size, which as a triathlete runner you're not really doing, would be a lot of reps, lower weight, lower to medium weight. So talking like 12 to 25 reps in one set with multiple sets. Now, that's the summary of the different kind of strength training. What you need to know as a triathlete or runner is that you want your maximum strength phase to be at least 4 months before your main event. Meaning if you're doing a big event in August, you're mostly done with heavier lifting in May or thereabouts. Even earlier is better because the longer your goal race is, the more time you need to dedicate to the endurance side of things, and we will go less on the strength training. So let me talk about a season so you can get a picture of how this would work. Let's say you finish your season in September or October, whether it's triathlon, running, and you have 2 or 3 weeks where you're taking it easy, you're not really doing much. You should be doing something, but you're not doing anything structured. Then you would get into a phase of training where you're back in the gym and you're intentionally doing lighter weights with 2 to 3 sets per station, and you're trying to get in 3 times a week. Then you would go to a phase, you would do that for 4 to 6 weeks. Then you would go to a phase of training where you're doing 1 warm-up set and then two or 3 sets that's in that sort of 8 to 10 range, where 8 to 10 is maxing you out. And then you would get into your maximum strength phase, which would be 4 to 6 weeks again. And that's where you're doing, a good proper warm-up. I would always recommend doing a warm-up set on each station. And then you're doing 3, maybe 4 sets of heavier lifts. So that's, for example, would be, you warm up with a bar on the bench press, and then you do 3 or 4 sets of 4 to 6 reps, all of them heavy. You're close to failure at the end of that number 5th or 6th, and you're taking a good bit of time in between each set. It could be 2 or 3 minutes where you're fully recovered. As a triathlete, it's not a bad idea to do some core work while you're waiting to recover on your chest in that example. And after the maximum strength phase, and maybe you're doing 2 or 3 days per week now in this phase of training, after maximum strength, you're going into strength maintenance. And that's where you get to the gym at least a couple times a week. You're doing your main exercises. We'll talk about that in a sec. Maybe the whole session takes you 35 to 45 minutes. And in that phase, you're now down to a warm-up set and then a couple of sets in the 8 to 12 range. That's moderately challenging. But here's the key. Your soreness would only last a day, maybe 2. If your soreness when you're doing a strength training after you are already done with your maximum strength phase, if the soreness lasts more than 2 days, you're lifting too heavy or you're doing too many sets. Because at this point in time, we need to be able to go out and do our key triathlon training or run training workouts without the strength impacting us, right? So it's a change in our direction of training. Exercises that you would want to include. There's a ton of them. But the key ones are going to be multi-joint exercises, squats, chest press, for running, box jumps, squat jumps, lunges, forward and backward lunges, Doing things like the curtsy lunges are great because that hits some of the ancillary muscles, but you need to be careful with your technique. We don't want to injure ourselves, so be careful with curtsy lunges, especially as a triathlete. You probably have tight hips already, so you need to be aware of things like that. Good ones for swimming are lat pull down, pull-ups. Assisted pull-ups is fine if you can't pull up your own weight. And the secondary muscles, I mean, you're going to hit them when you do your main strength stuff, but secondary is going to be things like triceps, biceps. Calf raises are important. So again, with the box jumps and plyometrics, you're going to hit a lot of that. Part 2 of strength training for everybody, if you happen to just come across this video, but in particular athletes, is all the core stuff. So when we're talking about maximum strength, we're talking about your main things, which might be, and I forgot deadlifts, right? But you're talking about deadlifts, chest press, squats, some of the, the main key things, lat pull downs, rows. But your core is engaged in all of these processes, and it's very engaged when you're swimming, biking, and running. And these are the exercises that a lot of them are traditional. That's going to be like crunches, roll-ups, pike sit-ups, planks, Russian twists, Superman back exercises, and then things that you might not consider core but are still in that core hip girdle are going to be side leg raises, hip flexor exercises, and things like that. So that's not a complete list, by the way. I'm just giving you kind of a top level summary on this. One of the things you got to be careful about with strength training as a triathlete or runner is we don't want to put a hard run workout and a hard strength workout, whether it's maximal strength or just strength maintenance, on the same day. You would never do that in your main phase of training when you're in your run season or your triathlon season. You would want to spread it out by a couple days if possible, if not at least 24 hours. And again, I got to refer back to that soreness level. It's okay to be a little sore and go out and do a hard run, intervals or a long run or things like that. But that soreness needs to have loosened up by the time you're done with the warm-up. If you're still feeling the soreness from your strength training in your run intervals, that's a problem. It's less so of a problem on bike intervals because biking does not impact the same way running does, and it's less of a problem in swimming. But strength and running, we have to be careful of the timing of our workouts. When you have to back up workouts together, let's say you've only got an hour, 15 minutes in the day and you want to, or you feel like you need to, maybe you do need to for your schedule, you need to do strength and a run. Depending on where you are in the time of the season, it's a good question. Do I do strength first or do I run first? If your key workout in that day is the run, you would run first and then go lighter on the strength. It's still okay to do leg exercises unless you really wrecked yourself on intervals or something like that, in which case you would do core and upper body. It's okay to do light leg exercises unless you are really beat up from your run. If it's more off-season or early season, it's okay to do your strength workout first and then run after, okay? But there has to be some cognitive awareness of how you're feeling and how heavy you're lifting compared to your maximum lifts and things like that. You don't necessarily need to know your maximum lifts as a endurance athlete, but if you have some clue when you're doing 4 to 5 to 6 reps in a set and you're like, number 6 was about as heavy as I can go, you could add 20% or 15%, and that's probably your maximum on that exercise. So with swimming, it's a different story. Unless you are a brand new swimmer, in general, I find personally it's safer to lift first and swim after, because swimming is so low impact. Now you got to be careful with shoulder lifts, overhead lifts, and then swimming after. If you're an experienced swimmer, it's okay to swim first, but you got to be careful with what you're doing in the gym after swimming, because swimming does wear you out upper body wise. So be very careful with what you're doing upper body if you decide to lift after your swim. And I could see a case where you're going to be biking and doing strength in the same day or in the same session. Let's say you're going to the gym and you're doing a spin class or something like that. It depends on the intensity of the biking, on how much you can get away with your legs afterwards. Again, cycling is less of a breakdown than running, so there's less of a chance of having problems. But you always need to err on the side of caution if you're going to lift legs after you do a spin class or something like that. So always be a little lighter, a little less aggressive, okay? It's great that you do strength training. It's important to do strength training year round, but we need to be aware of our body and aware of our limitations when we are doing this. So that's all I wanted to say today. Have a great time. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.